For the Climate Discussion Nexus, I'm John Robson, here with the latest readout video from our Wednesday Wake Up newsletter. And this week we start with a story the media put on ice about how the fact that the warming of the West Antarctic ice sheet, which is not happening elsewhere on that frigid continent, quote, is undoubtedly of natural origin because no external factors, e.g. orbital or anthropogenic factors, contribute to the asymmetric mode, end quote. One study does not make a field, of course, not even if it's full of terminology like asymmetric mode. And it's one thing to say the word undoubtedly, and quite another to have nobody doubt your paper. Science is, or at least should be, driven by skepticism. But it's remarkable how a story like that one goes straight into the deep freeze, while you just have to utter some variant of man-made climate change worse than thought experts say, or in this case, quote, Arctic Ocean acidification worse than previously expected, end quote, and the screaming headlines spawn like some loathsome vermin unleashed by man-made global warming. Meanwhile, we skeptics are stuck going, but the oceans aren't acidifying, even if they are becoming very slightly less alkaline. And could someone explain why we've been told for years that the carbon cycle just can't deal with man-made CO2, and suddenly we're being told the oceans are absorbing man-made CO2 in quantities so big it's dangerous? While we're trying to raise those questions, the editors are hitting print on yet another story, reaching the stock conclusion that this is it and we are all going to die. Another item in the newsletter noted that last week government agencies were saying investors were too dumb to recognize the risks of climate change. And yet, this week, the New York Times tells us, with a rather gloating tone, that climate change is destroying a hallowed, quote, American institution, end quote, namely the 30-year mortgage. See, according to the Times, banks are afraid that seaside homes are going to be washed away by the rising oceans. Like Bill Gates, maybe, or Barack Obama's? As usual, this scare story depended on the exploded RCP 8.5 emission scenario to generate predictions of sea level rises completely unlike anything that's now happening. And frankly, what seems a lot more likely is that banks are getting smarter about lending money to people who are building in places where there have always been floods. And what's more, they're cleverly offloading risk onto taxpayers because, as usual, it's governments that are mangling the risk calculations, which the American government certainly did leading up to the 2008 housing bubble-driven financial collapse. In the newsletter, we also talk about the effort to rewrite history so that warnings about natural cooling back in the 1970s somehow get transformed into warnings about man-made global warming. And we discuss this "God, I thank you that I am not like others" attitude of some alarmists when talking about the supposed mental defects of climate skeptics that prevent them and only them from thinking rationally about the issue. And we discuss the global warming footprint of artificial intelligence. Seems we might have found Bigfoot after all, inside a computer. And of course, we have another 1919 or 2019 precipitation quiz, this one from Brandon, Manitoba, and yet more news from the world of computer climate modeling, all of it bad in every conceivable dimension. So please visit our site, that's climatediscussionnexus.com, sign up for the Wednesday Wake Up if you're not already a subscriber, check out our videos, and help us spread the word. For the Climate Discussion Nexus, I'm John Robson.